Incredible journey of a grandma, my daughter-in-law exposed as useless, discover the life-changing truth. Betty Mulligan, a spirited 65-year-old widow, was known in Maplewood for her cherry pies that could revive even the weariest souls. But on this hot July day, under the swaying trees of the town's farmers' market, a storm was brewing in her heart. Whispers wrapped around her like thorny vines, picking at the edges of her thoughts. "Have you seen that girl?" one neighbor muttered, her voice cutting sharper than Grandma Betty's finest kitchen knife. "Useless, I tell you. What does she know about hard work?" That girl was Maria, her new daughter-in-law. With a smile brighter than summer sunshine, Maria had charmed not just Tom, Betty's son, but the entire town at least. That's what Betty had hoped until the gossip festered. She was proud of her family's roots, hard-working folks who built their lives from sweat and grit. But now, the ghosts of her own prejudices gnawed at the corners of her mind. Suddenly, they were all staring at her, waiting for her to take a stance. At that moment, Betty's heart ached. She didn't want to judge Maria, but the tales swirling like autumn leaves made her question everything she thought she knew. The market was vibrant, the air thick with the tang of fresh tomatoes and sweet corn, yet Betty felt isolated amidst the chatter. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. It took Betty's unyielding spirit to tire of the rumors until she stumbled upon Maria, nose buried in a jacket of tears outside the community center after running into the same backbiting neighbors. In that moment, Betty dropped her guard. The truth unfolded before her. Maria was volunteering her time for veterans, sacrificing her afternoons to listen to their stories, bringing comfort to those who faced unimaginable trials. The realization was like a cool breeze cutting through the humidity of her judgments. Betty felt the stirrings of change inside her, a flicker of curiosity about who Maria truly was. Just as hope began to bloom, the community center faced a funding crisis. The idea of joining forces with Maria made Betty's insides twist. Yet, they could unify their strengths, perhaps even bridge the invisible gulf between them. But the effort was tough, and tempers flared like fireworks, revealing hidden resentments and clashing perspectives. As Betty wrestled with her shame and budding respect for Maria, she found herself standing at a crossroads. Would she allow herself to see beyond her preconceived notions, or would stubborn pride wreck everything? The urgency of their situation loomed, the town's judgment hung like a heavy cloud above them. With high stakes and unresolved tensions, Betty faced the chaotic reality of it all. As the day of the fundraiser drew closer, tension crackled between the women, challenging everything they thought they knew about one another. How long could they keep their family intact amidst such turmoil? Would Betty's heart finally relent, or would pride leave her daughter-in-law lost in the winds of community gossip? One thing was certain, the journey ahead would change everything. With the day of the fundraiser just around the corner, Betty felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling in her chest. Each sunrise came with its own set of challenges. She knew they'd have to gather donations, bake pies, and put together a silent auction to raise funds for the community center, but her mind kept drifting back to Maria and their recent clashes. It was as if two realms existed within her, the proud traditions of her upbringing and the vibrant new world that Maria represented. Walking through her kitchen, the familiar scent of cinnamon and vanilla wrapped around her, yet it felt heavy with unspoken words. She glanced at the cherry pie cooling on the windowsill. It had always been her symbol of love and comfort. Yet now, it felt inadequate. Could she really serve such warmth to her daughter-in-law when their relationship was so bitterly cold? As if sensing her turmoil, Tom stepped into the room with a hopeful grin. "Mom, I think Maria is really excited about the fundraiser. She's been talking with everyone at the center." His enthusiasm sparked a tiny flicker of warmth inside her. "Excited or overwhelmed?" Betty replied, her tone sharper than she intended. Tom raised an eyebrow, not saying a word more. He knew this was hard for her. The next day, Betty found herself at the community center, surrounded by colorful posters and chatter. The air buzzed with purpose, but her heart was an anchor, weighing her down. Maria was at the front, rallying the volunteers, her spirit infectious. Betty watched as she moved among them, a bright spot amid the chaos. She caught snippets of laughter that filled the room, yet echoes of gossip whispered in her ears, taunting her to find fault. When Maria turned and met her gaze, there was no hint of resentment, just warmth and understanding. It made Betty's heart ache. Here was this woman, pouring herself into the community, sacrificing so much while Betty had remained guarded. "Betty!" Maria called, her voice cutting through the mingling crowds. "We could really use your famous pies for the auction. People have been asking for them." Betty's instinct was to retreat, to let pride shield her. But something deeper compelled her to step forward. The ghosts of judgment receded, just a little. "All right," she said, barely above a whisper. "I'll make the pies." As they began to work together, chopping vegetables and blending spices, moments of silence filled the air, yet they were no longer uncomfortable. They shared small glances, fragile smiles laced with a hint of understanding just below the surface. Suddenly, the kitchen felt like a bridge instead of a divide. "Thank you for coming around," Maria said, her voice soft but steady. "I know these days are difficult." Betty hesitated. "It's not that I thought you were useless, that's okay," Maria interrupted, her expression empathetic. "Change is hard for everyone. I just want you to know that I'm committed to this family, to Tom, and to this community." Betty felt a swell of gratitude mixed with shame. Could she continue this journey with open arms? The desire to let go of her judgments, however daunting, began to flood her heart. As the evening of the fundraiser approached, hope flickered in the air like the fading light of day. But would that be enough? What if the community's perceptions re-emerged, clashing with the bond they were slowly forming? The stakes had never been higher. Just when she thought she might be ready to embrace her daughter-in-law, a spattering of doubt bloomed within. Was she strong enough to face her own heart? A sudden announcement jolted her from her thoughts. Maria had arranged a presentation that would showcase both of their commitments to the center. Would they be able to stand together against the tide of gossip and let each other in? As questions circled in Betty's mind, the tension thickened yet again. Could they finally unite and redefine their place within this community, or would the truths they'd yet to unveil pull them apart? With fragile hope dotting the horizon like a far-off sun, the real challenge awaited them just around the corner. Would they be able to rise during the storm, or would it tear them apart? The sun dipped low on the horizon as the evening approached, drenching the community center in a warm, golden glow. Betty stood by the oven, the smells of cinnamon and sugar swirling around her like a comforting hug. Each pie was filled with memories of past fundraisers, a time when everything felt simpler. Yet tonight felt different. It was a blend of hope and apprehension, the air thick with unspoken words. As she slid the perfect cherry pie out, she caught sight of Maria setting up the tables with a group of eager volunteers. Betty admired her daughter-in-law's south-spirited drive, even if it stirred conflicting feelings in her heart. She had always imagined this role as a grandmother, preparing treats and sharing joy. Yet now, her thoughts were tangled with resentment and doubt. Could they really forge a new path when their past was still in shadow? "Hey, Mom." Tom's voice broke through her contemplation. "Maria says everything's coming together. She's really made it a community effort." "Sometimes it takes more than just effort, Tom," Betty muttered, folding a dish towel in her hands. The simple rhythm of folding connected her more to the familiar, to a time before the rift. Moments later, Maria walked over, the glimmer of her energy lighting up the space between them. "I appreciate everything you're doing, Betty," she said genuinely. "It really means a lot. The pies will be the highlight of the auction." Betty felt a knot twist within her. Her instinct told her to retreat, to hide behind the walls she had built. But Maria's eyes, filled with sincerity, chipped away at those defenses. "I want us to shine together tonight, to show everyone what we can do as a team." "Can we, though?" Betty asked, the question slipping out before she could catch it. "Can we really put aside our differences?" And she paused, swallowed hard. And trust each other? Maria stepped closer, a heartbeat of silence falling between them. I think we can. We just need to be brave. I'm committing to this family, to making things better. But I need you on my side, too. The vulnerability in Maria's voice struck deep. Betty's heart hurt in a way that was foreign yet all too familiar. Maybe it was the fear of losing Tom, or the anxiety of not being enough. But something within her wanted to grasp at this opportunity. As they combed through final arrangements, laughter erupted from the room filled with volunteers. A sense of camaraderie enveloped them like a warm blanket. Betty watched as Maria animatedly shared ideas, her gestures fluid, radiating confidence. It stirred something inside Betty. Maybe the comfort of tradition didn't have to clash with the vigor of innovation. Maybe they could meet in the middle. Just then, the lights flickered, and Maria's voice rose above the chatter. Everyone, thank you for being here. We're going to put on a show tonight. Let us make this fundraiser unforgettable. The crowd cheered, their enthusiasm infectious, wrapping Betty in a sense of belonging she had almost forgotten, yet beneath this wave of camaraderie, fear lurked. What if the community didn't accept them? What if the gossip returned, stronger than before? As the evening grew nearer, she could feel her heart race, doubt creeping in like a thief. Are we ready? Maria asked, her eyes searching Betty's, a challenge and an invitation. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on Betty. Could she finally let go of her prejudices? Could they face this storm together? With one breath, a flicker of certainty sparked within her. I guess we'll have to find out together. But as the crowd began to gather, a sudden, unwelcome figure arrived, someone whose presence could shatter everything they had worked to build. Would Betty be strong enough to stand beside Maria, or would this night unravel the fragile bond they had begun to weave? The stakes had just risen, and Betty's heart raced, wondering if they could embrace the possibilities ahead or if the past would drag them down. The crowd buzzed, a palpable energy that simmered in the air like the gentle warmth of fresh pies. But beneath the excitement, tension twisted in Betty's gut. She squinted at the figure that had just stepped through the doors of the community center, their former neighbor, Carol. Her presence was like the jarring clatter of an ice bucket at a summer picnic, a reminder of bitter disputes and old grudges. Mom, Tom said, breaking her focus. You okay? His brow furrowed with concern, his eyes flicking to where Carol stood, scanning the room. Yeah, just let us hope she doesn't stir things up, Betty replied, trying to keep her voice steady. But deep down, uncertainty gnawed at her. Could they push past the walls built by years of misunderstandings? Would tonight be the evening that offered them all a fresh start? Maria caught Betty's eye, determination sparking in her expression as she strolled over to join her family. You know we got this, right? Focus on the positive, she said, her hand resting gently on Betty's arm. It's easier said than done, Betty sighed. What if Carol starts talking? You know how people can be. Maria looked over at the other woman. We can't let negativity ruin this. Tonight is about us, let us show everyone what we can accomplish together. As the final countdown to the fundraiser approached, Betty tried to drown out the whispers of doubt swirling in her mind. One of the volunteers approached, excitement painted all over her face. Betty, the pies look amazing. I can't wait to see how people react when they taste them. Just as she managed a soft smile, Carol's voice broke through the chatter, sharp and cool as frost on a winter morning. I'm surprised to see you both working together. Didn't you despise each other just a few months ago? Laughter followed her remark, and Betty felt her heart sink. Tom stepped forward protectively, but Maria squeezed his hand, keeping him by her side. We've all been working hard, Maria replied, injecting warmth into the cold atmosphere, and we're excited to bring the community together. She's right, Betty added, forcing herself to sound upbeat, despite the racing pulse hammering in her ears. Change happens when people come together, despite differences. She didn't mention the differences that had almost torn them apart, but the hint of honesty lingered in the air. The crowd began filtering in, their voices merging into a harmonious buzz, creating a backdrop to the tension that had threaded its way through the earlier exchanges. A few familiar faces came to lend support, people who recognized the baking talents of the two women, people who saw the potential for healing in their collaboration. Betty put on a smile as she heard the laughter and cheers around her. The atmosphere thickened with hope, the promise of gratitude. This was their chance, her chance to reclaim what the past had tried to take from them. As Maria began to welcome guests, Betty observed the strength radiating from her daughter-in-law. It amazed her how Maria could navigate this turbulent sea of emotions with such grace. Maybe, just maybe, they could face anything together, but Carol wasn't finished. She cut through the crowd, drawing closer, the knowing smile on her face dripping with unspoken challenges. "I hope for your sakes that this doesn't blow up in your faces," she said with a sly glance at Maria, before turning back to the crowd. Betty felt a wave of anger rise within her. Was this the night they'd finally break free, or the night everything would fall apart again? Taking a deep breath, she straightened her back, focusing on the faces of community members who had come to support. Would they see strength in unity, or would Carol's words create doubt? The question lingered like the scent of pie in the air, appealing yet uncertain, opening a window of possibility. It was a pivotal moment. Could she find the courage to stand up and turn the tide before it swept them both away? The answer felt dangerously close, yet so far away. Just then, a loud shout erupted from the back of the room, capturing everyone's attention. What was happening now, and would it bring them closer or drive them apart? The shout echoed through the community center, piercing the air thick with nervous tension. Heads turned in unison as a young man stood, red-faced and animated, clearly overwhelmed with excitement. They just announced the silent auction winners, he declared, his voice boisterous enough to command attention. Instantly, the atmosphere shifted, tension easing just slightly as the crowd buzzed with curiosity. Betty felt her heart race for a different reason now. Would the auction be a success? She strained to catch a glimpse of the stage, where Maria was already making her way through the crowd, her determined smile back in full force. "Betty, let us look," Tom urged, pulling his mother toward the front. The promise of laughter and celebration inched her anxiety to the side, at least momentarily. She planted her feet, focusing on each step toward the stage, taking in the familiar faces around her. Some smiled in support, others shared glances that conveyed respect for her determination. As Maria took the mic, her voice resonated through the room. "Thank you all for participating in our fundraiser. Your support means the world to us." There was a note of cheerfulness in her tone that made Betty swell with pride. But Carol's shadow loomed behind them, a lurking specter that Betty wished she could will away. "Now, for the exciting part," Maria continued, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let us announce the highest bidder for the pie-eating contest." The room erupted in laughter, and Betty caught a glimpse of a few familiar faces grinning widely, eager for some friendly competition. "Who knows, maybe I'll even take home the title this year," a lady shouted from the back, earning a round of applause. With each name Maria announced, the energy in the room soared. Even Betty's heart felt lighter with each win, the comforting scent of baked goods reminding her why they had all come together. But just as the applause began to die down, Carol's voice sliced through once more, its sting sharper than before. "It's all fun and games, but let us not forget, the real work happens outside these walls, don't you think?" she called out. The laughter quieted as confused murmurs swept through the crowd. "Enough, Carol," a man shouted, his voice booming across the room. "We're here to celebrate, not bicker. Let us focus on tonight." The support behind him felt like a wall of solidarity that raised Betty's spirits. "Exactly," Maria chimed in, her eyes ablaze with resolve. "Tonight is about showing that we can rise above the past. Let us use this moment to build bridges, not walls." Betty felt the swell of purpose rising inside her. The support they had from the community was powerful, but Carol's words still lingered in the air, dark clouds threatening to cast shadows over their success. But as the room broke into cheers for the next winner announcement, it allowed Betty to breathe deeply, brushing aside the negativity. This was their night, a spotlight shining brightly on them, and she refused to let anyone dim that. A deep thrum of emotions pulsed through the heart of the room, hope mixed with a simmering undercurrent of tension. Would Carol hurl another barb? As Betty scanned the crowd, she caught sight of a few raised eyebrows and whispered conversations. The uncertainty shimmered in the air. Amidst the celebration, the realization dawned on Betty. The challenge with Carol was unfinished. There were wounds to heal, and they wouldn't just be ignored. It was now or never. If they wanted true change, they had to confront the past head-on. Maybe it's time for a conversation, Betty thought, her resolve taking root. Would facing Carol so directly change the script of the evening? Just then, the young man who had shouted earlier caught her eye again, just as he was about to announce another winner, the excitement evident in his features. But this time, she felt a different rush of anticipation, the kind that churned with anxiety but also a budding sense of courage. What would happen if she steered the conversation toward healing right now? With Carol in the audience, could they finally take a step toward understanding? Betty's heart raced at the prospect. Would she find the courage in herself to be the voice of change? The energy in the room shifted again, this time more dramatic than before. People began to settle down, eyes glancing between Maria and Betty, waiting to see what would unfold. Maria caught Betty's gaze, her encouraging smile urging her forward. The moment felt electric, a wave of anticipation rippling through the crowd. Swallowing hard, Betty stepped forward from the back, her heart hammering in her chest. The focus of the room had shifted fully onto her, and she fought to steady her breathing. Excuse me, everyone, Betty began, her voice shaky but firm. The murmurs softened as people leaned in, their attention sharp. I know tonight is about celebration, and we have so much to be thankful for. But she hesitated, feeling the weight of her words. There's something we can't ignore. Whispers swept through the crowd. Betty could feel Carol's sharp gaze on her but pressed on. I think we need to address some of the challenges that we face as a community. Carol's right. The crowd shifted, surprise pulsing through their collective heartbeat. There is real work out there, and it won't all be solved by just coming together for events like this. The room held its breath as she continued. Change requires honesty. It requires understanding between all of us. She let that word understanding hang in the air, hoping it would resonate with those gathered. Just as she thought she glimpsed a spark of recognition in the faces around her, she noticed Carol smirking, the woman's posture defiant and unyielding. What are you saying, Betty? Carol called out, her voice dripping with skepticism. That we should just sit back and do nothing while we talk about feelings? The laughter that followed felt like a knife digging into Betty's resolve, but she squared her shoulders. No, Carol. I'm saying we need to talk about how we can truly support each other. We're only going to get stronger if we listen to our challenges. To each other. Betty didn't want to engage in a back-and-forth battle. She wanted to bridge gaps. Her heart raced as she looked around at her neighbors, friends she'd known for years. Each of us has stories that shape us. If we're going to move forward and create real support, we need to lift our voices together. The silence that followed felt palpable. A few heads nodded, and she saw some of the community members exchange glances that mirrored her sentiment. The murmur of acceptance began to ripple, quiet but constant. Maria, sensing the moment's potential, added, Betty is right. There is strength in vulnerability. We are here to celebrate, but let's also create an environment where we can voice our struggles. Because those struggles, they matter. There it was. The warmth in the room began to build back between the tension. Some faced Betty with open expressions, while others pulled back, unsure of where the conversation might venture. Carol, however, was a coiled spring, her irritation clearly bubbling under the surface. Some people might not want to hear those stories, especially not from someone like you, Carol shot back, her voice cold. After all, you have a reputation to protect. Biting her tongue, Betty resisted the urge to retaliate. She could see that the tide was turning, and she didn't want to spoil a moment where understanding might take hold. Maybe you're right, Carol, she responded, calm yet fierce. But I can't imagine progress without listening to where we come from. We can be better than what divides us. As she finished, she felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. What if this was the moment that sparked change? Could her words ring true with others? Can they carry the weight they needed to create a path forward? Then, a hand shot up from the back of the crowd. It was Tom, her unwavering supporter. Mom is right. We all have baggage, but we need to unpack it together. Let us not hide from it anymore. The murmurs began again, voices weaving through the air, full of acknowledgement. Excitement mixed with apprehension, the room hanging in that precarious balance between what was and what could be, and just when it seemed like they might truly embrace this opportunity. Carol stood, her posture rigid and her expression simmering with indignation. You think you can change the conversation, but you're just a distraction. What you're proposing is just another cycle of nonsense. Betty's heart fell, the shift of hope flickering just as it promised to ignite. Would anyone rally behind her, or would Carol's harshness rain down once more, extinguishing their brief glimmer of solidarity? Who's ready to stand together? She called, her voice trembling. The crowd began murmuring again, the energy surging, but would they embrace a chance for change, or let fear hold them back? Betty felt the air around her grow heavy as she stood there, waiting for a response. Would they stand with her or retreat back into their shells? The silence thickened, each passing second stretching into what felt like an eternity. Then, a voice broke through the tension. I'm with you, Betty, shouted Sarah from the corner. The faces around her shifted, stirred now by Sarah's unexpected declaration. A few more voices chimed in, timid at first, but growing in strength. Yeah, we need to talk. Encouraged, Betty pressed on, her voice rising with conviction. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about finding a way to support one another and make our voices heard. The room brightened slightly, a spark igniting in the hearts of those who had been silently nodding along. As the murmurs of agreement grew, so did the solidarity in the air. Betty could feel a wave of energy building, hope that perhaps they could finally confront the underlying issues they had been avoiding. Still, Carol stood like a statue, her features hardened. She seemed unyielding. You're playing with fire, Betty, she warned, a hint of menace laced in her words. People are fragile. You think they want to relive their past? I think they want to heal, Betty shot back, urgency lacing her tone. We can create a safe space to be honest. Isn't that what this community is about? Carol's eyes darkened. Your idea of honesty might just tear us apart, she retorted. Yet even as she said it, the corners of her mouth turned downward, the uncertainty creeping in. Betty sensed a shift. Maybe we'll never see eye to eye, Carol. But if we work together even when it's uncomfortable we can find common ground, she suggested, a tinge of desperation in her voice. Little by little, more voices joined in support. Let us talk. Someone called. The murmurs of urgency turned to a chorus of clarity. As the clamor rose, Betty felt her heart start to race again. This was the moment she had hoped for, where honesty met courage. We can start small, she proposed, eyes scanning the crowd. Let us share our stories, our struggles. We might find out we're not so different after all. Yeah, everyone has a story, shouted Tom, earning a few chuckles as some nodded in agreement. Laughter helped crack the tension, a wave of relief washing over the room. Just then, Betty spotted Carol shifting uneasily, her facade softening ever so slightly. Underneath, perhaps there was a person ready to listen, if only just a little. Let us face it together, Maria called out, inspiring further cheers. We owe it to each other. As Betty caught Carol's eye once more, she took a deep breath, feeling the energy shift yet again, but this time it was different. Instead of fear, it was determination. They were ready to move forward. Carol, still standing firm, was an unwavering thorn in this blossoming rose garden of solidarity. Betty could see her resolve wavering. You're all just going to excuse her, aren't you? Carol shouted suddenly, her voice sharp. Excuse who? Someone yelled back, frustration fluttering in the air. Excuse her past. Carol pointed at Betty, her voice fierce as she took a step forward. The crowd held its breath again, unsure of how this new push might land, but Betty stood firm, heart racing as she finally faced the brunt of the challenge. I own my past, Carol. And I'm ready to share it. Are you? The room sank into silence again, the fierce challenge issuing a heartfelt request. Would Betty's truth guide them, or would Carol's bitterness flare into a flame of division once again? Monumentous moments often spark from honest confrontation, and Betty felt the weight of that truth pressing heavily, longing for resolution. Could this be the moment they all needed? Or would they falter once more, clinging to hesitation while true healing slipped away? The answer loomed over them, and it was electric. Betty felt her heart thumping loudly in her chest as she faced the crowd, their eyes flicking between her and Carol. She could hear the barely contained breaths, the undercurrent of anxiety that rippled through the group. It was her moment, and yet the weight of it sat heavily on her shoulders. "Let me show you how real vulnerability looks," she said, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled. She took a deep breath, memories flashing in her mind like snapshots. "A few years ago, I made mistakes. I hurt people I cared about, and I thought I could bury it all and just move on. But that didn't work. It never does." Carol shifted slightly, and for the first time, the icy glare softened just a fraction. Betty seized the opportunity. "I lost my way, and I pushed everyone I loved away. It was the loneliest time of my life. But I found help, I learned to own my story, and I want us all to do the same. You see, healing begins when we can share what's in our hearts." The murmurs grew louder, expressions shifting from doubt to interest. "Everyone has something to share," Tom said, louder now, clapping his hands together for emphasis. "We've all dealt with our own ghosts. Let us figure this out together." Encouraged, Betty pressed on. "Exactly. And it doesn't have to be huge or dramatic. Even the smallest stories, the everyday moments of pain, they matter. They connect us." More voices joined in, each sharing a snippet of their struggles. Susan spoke of losing her job, Javier about feeling invisible in a room full of people. Each confession peeled back another layer of fear, exposing vulnerability like a soft wound finally able to breathe. And Carol stood there, her arms crossed, a fortress of denial beginning to crack. Betty could see it, the doubt in her stance, tricky hope flickering in her eyes. People were opening up. This was more than just about words anymore. It was about healing. "See, Carol?" Betty pleaded gently, her eyes locking onto hers. "This is what we need. It won't tear us apart, it will bring us together. You can share, too. We want to hear your truth." The heavy silence clung between them, the crowd almost palpable in their anticipation. Carol's walls began to tremble, vulnerability seeping through the cracks. "You think sharing will solve everything?" she spit out, though her voice lacked its earlier sting. "No," Betty replied, leaning slightly forward, as an unintentional whisper rang out, "but it's the first step. It's about understanding, about community." Carol swallowed hard, her breath shallow. The glimmer of raw emotion shone through, a spark of something deeper and unguarded. I didn't think I could even talk about it," she admitted, her voice almost lost in the hushed room. The crowd leaned in closer, a collective heart beating in rhythm fragile yet fierce. "Take your time," Betty urged softly, feeling a swell of compassion. After the whispers, the room breathed again. Just when it seemed Carol might relent, she hesitated. "You want me to air my dirty laundry when I've worked so hard to keep it hidden?" "Yes," Betty cried, her voice echoing in the newfound space of courage. "Because we're on this journey together. We've been carrying the same load, and it doesn't have to be so heavy if we share it." The air felt charged, a silent battle between fear and hope playing out in front of them. Carol's expression hardened a moment longer, but it flickered. Was it fear of being judged or the yearning to be understood? "Do it for yourself. For us," came a voice from the back, resonating with heartfelt support. And in that moment, the crowd seemed to hold its collective breath, awaiting Carol's next move. Would she step into the light or retreat back into shadows? The room hummed with tension, a beautiful fusion of vulnerability and strength gripping every heart. What would happen next? Would this be the break they'd all been waiting for, or simply another moment lost in the tangled webs of fear? Carol's fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve, a small action that echoed the whirlwind of emotion inside her. The crowd's anticipation felt as heavy as a winter coat, bearing down on her resolve. She'd been the rock, the voice of reason, the one who kept everything together. But now, standing in front of the very people she thought she had to protect, she felt unmoored. Why should I even bother? She finally questioned, her voice hoarse but steady. What's the point? You all make it sound so easy, like just talking will fix everything. It doesn't work that way. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Betty could see discomfort on some faces, but also a flicker of understanding. They, too, had felt that weight, the heavy cloak of unshared grief. Because hiding isn't healing, she countered, uncertainty giving way to determination. Nobody's saying it will solve all our problems, but sharing our truths lightens the load even just a bit. It lets the fear breathe like letting sunlight into a dark room. The tension thickened, but something shifted in Carol's stance. The walls around her heart began cracking. Betty noticed the flicker of vulnerability dancing in her eyes, the hesitance and hesitation giving life to something deeper. I haven't been the mother I wanted to be, Carol murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel like I've failed everyone. The confession sat heavy in the air, like dropping a stone into a still lake, rippling outward, connecting everything. That statement laid bare so many unlived lives, dreams unfulfilled. There were nods of acknowledgement and sympathy in the crowd. It was clear they had all remembered times when they felt they didn't measure up, when the voices in their heads whispered doubts darker than any they could voice aloud. Betty stepped closer, sensing the fragility of the moment. You're not alone in that. So many of us have felt that way. You don't have to carry it like a badge. Let us help you hold it. With each passing second, the energy in the room transformed. Carol's hard exterior softened visibly, her arms slowly unfolding, even as her breath quickened. What if I say something and I scare you all away? She asked, her voice trembling. Then we'll be scared together, a voice chimed from the back, laughter mingling with empathy, but at least we'll be scared together. A wave of understanding washed over the room. Maybe they all needed to face their ghosts, not just for themselves but for one another. Vulnerability could knit together the frayed edges of their connections, stitching strength into their shared community. With her heart pounding, Betty took a step even closer. Carol, your story matters. It matters because it's real, and we are all real, she said, her words filled with conviction. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to share what's weighing you down. Carol's eyes flicked upward, meeting Betty's unwavering gaze, and in that moment, something cracked wide open. Okay, she said slowly, her voice trembling, okay, maybe I do have something to say. Gasps of anticipation filled the room as all eyes focused on Carol. Even the quiet hum of tension morphed into a symphony of support. Perhaps this was the turning point they were all grasping for, the moment of courage that could spark a multitude of voices. As Carol inhaled deeply, preparing to finally unearth her truth, a sharp sound echoed from the rear of the room, a loud crash that shattered the fragile moment. A table had tipped, sending chairs clattering, reverberating with urgency. What had just happened? Would this derail Carol's breakthrough, or would it rally the group together even more firmly? The atmosphere shifted once again, leaving the audience in suspense, hearts racing with uncertainty. What would come next? Would the bonds forged in this tender moment withstand the unexpected jolt? The crash echoed ominously through the community center, slicing through the fragile moment of connection they had been building. The crowd turned, hearts racing with confusion and concern. Betty felt an icy grip on her chest as she squinted into the chaos. Maria dashed toward the fallen table, quick on her feet. Betty's breath caught as she watched Maria help an elderly woman who had stumbled, her cane slipping from her grip. Are you okay? Maria asked, voice soothing and steady, her worry for the woman eclipsing her earlier bravado. The community held its breath, and then relief washed over everyone like warm sunlight as the woman nodded, a grateful smile stretching across her face. Just a little shaky, that's all, the woman replied, and the crowd chuckled softly, breaking the tension that had threatened to swallow them whole. As they turned back to the front, the atmosphere lightened. Betty felt the weight lift, if just slightly. Life happens, doesn't it? She chuckled, stealing glances at the now quiet assembly. She felt a flicker of hope return, and she too stepped forward, facing Carol once again, her heart steadying as she spoke. Just like that little accident, sometimes we stumble. But it's how we pick ourselves up that matters. Carol nodded, her expression pensive. You're right. I guess that's part of the struggle, isn't it? We let fear keep us from standing back up. Her voice trembled, vulnerability spreading like ripples across a pond. I fell many times, Betty confessed, her voice soft but clear, and there were days I didn't think I could rise again. But it was the love from the community that pulled me through, and perhaps, that's what we need right now. The room buzzed with anticipation again, the crowd not just spectators anymore, but participants. The warmth of shared stories and common humanity filled the air. It was no longer just about gossip or misunderstandings. Each person in that room understood that they were part of something deeper, something real. Then, something remarkable happened. Carol stepped further into that collective light. I held on too tightly to who I was supposed to be, she began, her voice finding strength. The perfect neighbor, the perfect mother, but I lost sight of who I wanted to be. A hush fell over the crowd as curiosity and empathy drew them closer to her. What if I make more mistakes? What if I scare more people? The tremor in her voice cracked the facade she'd built. Then you reach out. That's what we're here for, Maria affirmed, stepping beside her, a bridge forming between them. Every single one of us has stumbled. Just like tonight. If we can rise together, then surely we can face anything. The crowd erupted with murmurs of agreement. Betty felt her heart swell as the empathy danced in the air. Here they were, standing together, readying each other for whatever might come next. Tonight isn't just about the fundraiser, Betty said, confidence growing inside her. It's about community, support, and understanding. Let us commit to being there for each other. The room ignited with applause, voices rising in harmony as everyone reached out, including Carol, who surprised everyone by clasping Maria's hand. It was a gesture of acceptance, a declaration that the past didn't have to define the future. From that moment on, every voice mattered. As they shifted towards sharing in conversation, they wove tight-knit relationships from the threads of vulnerability. Each story added texture to the fabric of community, mending the tears and binding everyone closer together. Even with the weight of doubt lingering, they had shifted the narrative. They chose honesty over judgment, understanding over assumptions. With each shared struggle and tiny victory, the walls came down. As the evening wound down, Betty gazed around the center at the faces of her friends and neighbors, hearts open, minds echoing with newfound respect. Laughter rang out, genuine and fresh, cleansing the air that had once been heavy with resentment. Can you believe this? Tom said, a radiant smile illuminating his face. What a transformation, huh? Just like you said, Mom. It's unreal. Betty beamed back. Yes, darling. It's wonderfully real. As the last rays of sunlight spilled through the windows, painting gold upon their faces, every soul present felt liberated. Change began that night, not just for Betty and Maria but for the entire community of Maplewood. In that vibrant room, amid connections transformed, breakthroughs were born, glimmers of healing shining brightly through cracks of judgment. They had all but confirmed one truth: together, they could face any storm, embrace any struggle, and nurture the very spirit of community that made them whole. As the evening came to a close, Betty whispered a promise to herself. She would cherish this moment, share this story, and continue to nurture the relationships that had reminded her of the profound power of love and understanding. And as she looked at Maria holding hands with Carol, she knew this was just the beginning of their journey. Now, as our story wraps up, I need to ask you something. You need to subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories we've got coming. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes all the difference. I want to hear from you. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about the ending. Did it resonate? And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation. Your engagement propels this community forward, so let us keep it rolling.